Maze.
Welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine. If you enjoy this programming, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Join Truth and Rhythm's membership program through Patreon. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkandstuff.net. At that site, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm.
I'm delighted to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership former members of Frankie Beverly and Maze's touring band, now known as TMF or The Music Forever. TMF includes one of Maze's founders, along with others who've been part of the group for 20 years or more and who have worked with stars such as Whitney Houston, Earth, Wind & Fire, Mavis Staples, Janet Jackson, and Al Jarreau. Together, they are honoring one of soul and funk music's most successful and beloved legacies, and includes Maze classics like Southern Girl, Happy Feeling, Feel That You're Feelin, Back in Stride, Running Away, Golden Time of Day, Workin Together, and Can't Get Over You. All 8 of Maze's 1977 to 1993 albums hit the R&B top 10, with 15 singles going top 20. In addition to bringing those songs to vivid life on stage, TMF is producing new music, including the soulful single, Making Love to the Music. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. How are you all?
Good.
Doing all right. How about you?
Great.
Doing well. So glad to have you all. Thank you for making the time to do this. The fans are going to really enjoy it. So gratitude to all of you.
Great.
Thank you.
So let's jump right in and kind of identify the 5 of you. We have 5 of the 7 today. And if you could each go around and tell me your name, what you do in the group, where you're from originally, and where you are today.
Okay.
So,
all right.
And I'm here. I live in Virginia. I've been with Maze for 55 years. And I'm from Philly. Yeah.
And your percussion and vocals, right?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Roame. Who's up next?
I'll jump in, I guess.
All right, sure.
I'm Calvin Napper, and I'm the drummer. I'm from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That's where I reside right now. I played drums with Maze for 13 years. And so I'm currently still here in Winston-Salem.
All right, North Carolina in the house. I'm near Charlotte,
Yes,
so yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
I'm
Chris?
Daniel. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
I'm Daniel Weatherspoon. I'm keyboards in Oregon. I'm currently living in Maryland. I'm originally from Chicago. And I was with Maze for 2 years. And yeah, I'm in Maryland now. It's a good life.
Excellent. All right. Chris or Bear?
Bear, you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead, Chris. You're good.
Okay. Chris Walker.
A light band.
Right. Born and raised in Houston. Lived in New York for 13. Back in Houston. And I'm the lead vocalist for TMF. And I've been a long time fan of Maze, of course, for many, 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 many years, and all of these guys.
Very good. Thank you. And last but not least, Bear.
Yes, Bear Williams, bass player, musical director. I lived in Los Angeles for 25 years. I'm originally from Chicago, and that's where I reside again now. So.
Very good. Well, thank you, one and all. Bear, let's stick with you for the next one. If you could just give us a little brief background on your other musical experiences besides, Maze and TMF, and how you got into TMF or into Maze.
Well, my musical background goes all the way back to my high school days. I was 16 years old when my high school band director, Mr. George Hunter, hired me to be a part of his big band outside of school. So I was, 16 years old playing with these 30 and 40-year-old teachers and doctors and lawyers. His band was called George Hunter and the Moonlighters. Henceforth, they were all doing other things, but they were all accomplished musicians. So that was a heck of a way to cut my teeth. From there, I went I toured with the Staple Singers for about 5 years. Went from that into the studios in Chicago, worked with people like Gene Chandler, Jerry Butler, Shirley Bassey. And from that point, fast forward, I was with various groups and stuff, and fast forward, I had a chance meeting with Anita Baker in Detroit. I was working with Bobby Lyle, her musical director at the time, and he had a show in Detroit, and he invited her to the show. And so consequently, I got to meet her and her husband after the show. And from that point, we just kind of hit it off. I had my business cards with me after the show, and I said, listen, if you ever need a bass player, please keep me in mind. I gave it to her husband, Walter. And he said, oh man, this is great, actually, because we're getting ready to get rid of our bass player. And so the timing couldn't have been more perfect. It was about 6 or 7 months later that I got an official letter from her management inviting me to become part of her touring band. And from there, toured with her for about a year, made great friends and in the industry, people in the band and stuff, and they were beckoning me to come out to LA. So from that point, after that tour, I got the job with George Duke, which basically that's like the oak tree that everything else came out of. Okay. And so from there, Boney James, Jonathan Butler, Larry Carlton, Steve Perry, all these different other acts came through that. And the Maze thing came because I was actually recruited by one of the former members of Maze, which was Wayne Ziggy Lindsay. I was referred because they were on they were doing their Back to Basics record at that time in 1993. And he referred me to Frankie. Frank called me himself, and he asked me to come up to his house. He had a beautiful studio in the Bay Area, and I came up, recorded, the bulk of the album, and from that point, that was 94 when the album was released, and then years went past, of course, and then it was around 2000. I'm gonna say around 2002. I got another call from another friend in the band at that time, Michael White, the drummer, and he said, "Hey, man, Robin Dewey, who was the original bass player on all those great records early on, he said Robin's going on a solo career and he's leaving the band, so Frankie's holding auditions." And so I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." I thought that was something that those are not words I thought I'd ever hear. So I dialed Frankie up, and he was really surprised that I was interested. And I said, "No, I worked on the record with you guys. I think I know what you may need in that area." And so he had me, he flew me up, and as they say, cliche, the rest is history. I was with the band for 20 years. So.
Wow, that's such an impressive history, Bear. Thank you for sharing all that amazing
you're welcome.
range of artists that you've had experience with.
Thank you. Yeah, coming out of Chicago, and Daniel can attest to this. It was that Chicago was just a proving ground, as well as Philly and a lot of other places. But you had to play so many different things well in order to make it as a musician. So I had a really good foundation, and so of course now you said fast forward. This is how I'm in TMF. We all banded together and formed TMF, and so that's where we are now. So
Excellent. Thank you for that. Roame, I'm going to get back
Sure.
to you because we're going to talk some Maze history. But just in terms of other background, how you got into Maze, let's jump to Calvin for that story.
Okay. So my background is basically in gospel music. That's where the majority of my background is. I started out playing with my mom and aunts when I was like 13 years old. They had a group of sisters called the Napper Singers. And so I grew up traveling with them. They were in what's considered the Quartet Gospel Network, So I played with them like for some years, ventured off from that, and I started in the contemporary gospel field. I worked, my first professional gig was with a guy named Pastor John P. Key and New Life Community Choir. I worked with him for about 1.5 years. Then went on from doing that to working with an artist named Donald Lawrence, the Tri-City Singers, worked with him for about 7-8 years. And then I, went from that point to, I recorded on some records with some different artists through Donald Lawrence because he's a producer. So played drums on a lot of different records, and then ran into Donnie McClurkin, Pastor Donnie McClurkin, who's a big gospel artist, worked with him for about 4 years. So after that stint from working with him, I had a friend of mine based with Stephanie Mills, R&B singer Stephanie Mills, and he called me and asked me if I'd be interested in coming and playing drums. And I was like, I'm sure, man, I'd like to check it out. Why not? So got with her, worked with her for about 2 years, and that's where we come into the Maze thing. So we were doing a show, and we were opening for Maze in Baltimore at Pier 6. And one of the band members that was in the band at the time, he saw me on the side of the stage, and he told his tech to make sure that, he got my number before, if I were to leave before they finished. And I was like, no, I'm gonna be here, blah, blah, blah. So one thing led to another. We talked afterwards, after the show, and I ended up going out to San Francisco about maybe a month or so later to audition. And they kept me over for an additional day because I was told that, hey, once you come out, just plan to stay for an extra day. If Frank digs you, he's going to want to keep you over. So I did. And then the rest is history. I was a part of Maze from that point in September of 2010 until May of this year. And so now we formed TMF, The Music Forever, to continue the legacy of,
Exactly.
the music. So
Yeah. Thank you for that.
That's my story.
Heavy on the gospel tip over there. Yeah. All right. Well,
Glad to be a
we've got
part of
Jubu. You got audio? You're good?
Yes.
We already rolled through introductions, so I'll just say that you are the guitar man, right? So everyone knows. And
Yes.
we were just going around and telling how became part of the Maze organization. So I think we were moving on to Daniel next.
Oh, good morning. So I'm Daniel. I play keys, as I said earlier. I started in Chicago in the gospel world as well. Born and raised Kojic. I'm not sure if you ever heard of that, but it's a great town. But yeah, I started young. I started about 11. Music wasn't necessary. I don't even know if I've actually shared this with the guys a lot, but music wasn't my interest. I wanted to play football, believe it or not. But oddly enough, at 9, I found out I had bone disease. So, so at 9, I was on crutches and had a leg brace for 3 years. So I could no longer play sports. It happened on the field. Actually, I got hit on the field and couldn't walk. So at that point, we found out I was actually I was born with it, but we never knew it. So at 11, about 11, I needed an outlet. I needed something to, because I'm just in the house. My older brother's playing and family, yada, yada. I didn't get to play in the summer. I'm in the house, so I just decided to pick up a habit. And those two habits, one was I was always fascinated with architecture and just the design of buildings. And then I just started twinkling at piano because we're in church, all the time. I was never the guy that, sat behind the drummer at church. It used to be back when I was coming up, it used to be 10 guys, 10 little kids with holding a pair of drumsticks, sitting behind the drummer, wishing they didn't get a chance to play. I was never that. I was never interested. And then because of my ailment, I just took to piano as just a habit, something to do to keep me busy. And next thing you know, it became life's call for me, So I started playing around town, maybe about 16, 17. I was gigging around town, in high school. Every year I was in marching band. Not to my junior year, junior, senior, I was in marching band, but the other 4 years, I started getting into jazz trio and, symphonic band. And I played clarinet my freshman year of high school. And then I went to and hated it. Then I went to trombone my sophomore year and hated it. And then, but after high school, I started picking up work around town and, small sessions here and there, artists and records that never come out and gigs. And then out of nowhere, I got a call, which I think was like a pivotal point. I was kind of doing things more popular. I was working with Thompson, this guy, he passed away named Milton Bronson. And one day I got a call to do a record for Ricky Dillard, which is a gospel artist. He used to do house music back in the day, but this was 35 years ago now. And in the middle of that record, they brought in the guy to co-produce the album because I guess it was just kind of falling apart. And the guy they brought in to produce the record was Donald Lawrence, which is the same guy Calvin mentioned. So in the midst of working on that record, at the end of the record, I got a call one day from Donald saying, "Hey man, I want you to come be a part of this record I'm doing." And I don't think I had met Calvin yet. Or if I did, I don't think we knew each other then. Maybe it's 25 years ago now. But it was right at the beginning of us meeting. And I got called to do this record, and he said, "I'm working on this record in Detroit, and I want you to be a part of it." And it happened to be Karen Clark's finally Karen album, her first solo album. And Calvin was a part of it. And that's where our friendship kind of jumped off. I took a solo on that record, but I was given a feature on that record. And, and no, please don't take this in any form of arrogance in any way whatsoever. But I took a solo. They wanted a keyboard solo on this one song. And I got a letter maybe about 2 months ago saying that they're going to honor it as the most famous solo in gospel music. And it was a solo on a song called Jesus is the Love Song. Yeah. And I played keyboards. I played the keyboard solo on that. That's me on the video, on the record. And here we are 20 years later, 25 years later, and it's still very popular thing. So, I mean, you never know when you're doing something, how long it's going to last or where it's going to go and yada, yada, yada. And it was that moment was life-changing for me. And then from there, I went on to do other things, Bishop Jakes, we did Mega Fest. It slowly started evolving to R&B. And then here we are years later. I mean, we don't have to focus on the things in the middle. Well, a few of them. I did a remix record with Janet. I did Beyonce's tour. I did Paula Abdul record. I mean, just a lot of stuff was going on. And then about 4 years ago, right before a pandemic, my friend Calvin called and said, you can expect a phone call. Blah, blah, blah. Your phone's going to ring. Blah, 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 yada, yada. And I was in Target right around, school supply time or whatever. And I'm in Target and getting stuff for school or finals or something for the kids. And my phone rang and it was a guy named Joe Douglas on the phone at the time. And he asked me, did I have a minute to talk? And I said, sure. And he happened to put Mr. Beverly on the phone, put Frank on the phone. And he said, no, let me go back before that. Before that, I got called to sub a gig for the guys in Mexico because the keyboard player couldn't attend it. And I never got to meet Mr. Beverly in the rehearsals, and he never even came to the rehearsals, I don't think. And I didn't meet him until after the show. So I think I did a couple days with the guys. I believe it was that way, or either I learned it on the spot, or however it was. And I didn't meet him physically until the show was over with. And I feel like the first time I met Roame, I was in the airport at baggage claim, and I said something to him. My brothers is getting stopped by security or something like that. And I said that to Roame, and I didn't know he was Roame. And I did the gig, and then about a year later or so, pandemic was kicking in or coming to a close, and I got a phone call asking if I wanted to be a member because it was just a transition of the old board player, and that's how I was a part of the team. And it lasted about 2 years, and then it came to a close. It was a good time. It was a good time while it lasted. So that's my story.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. No problem.
And now we have Chris. Chris, how did you, what was your background coming in? I know you had some work with Al Jarreau and so forth. And then how'd you hook up with the Maze organization?
Well, like many of the guys, I started out in the church. We had a family gospel group called the Walker Brothers. And, when I graduated from the high school for the performing and visual arts, I knew I wanted to pursue endeavors outside of Houston. And my father, of course, he wanted me to go to seminary school. And I looked at him and said, Dad, that is not for me. So I packed up my suitcases and I moved to New York with $40 in a dream against my parents' wishes. And the school that I wanted to attend was already in progress. In fact, I submitted an application. They told me not to come because I couldn't afford the tuition. So anyway, I arrive in New York. The very next day, I go down to the school and I hear music coming out of the auditorium. I poke my head in. Guys on stage playing. Just so happened they didn't have a bass player. So they saw that I was carrying a bass, invited me up, and the dean of the school walked in and instructed the program and gave me a full scholarship to go to school. And that's how my journey started in New York City. From there, I started working with Regina Bell as her musical director when I was 19, and our first tour was actually with opening for Maze featuring Frankie Beverly. So, and Roame, I remember Roame very well because he was always so nice to me. Every time I would see him, he had a smile on his face, and he was always encouraging as well. And so during our show with Regina, I would come out and sing a duet with her. And I would look in the wings, and there would be Frankie listening, and which of course made me nervous. But on many occasions, he came up to me and said, "Young man, keep doing what you're doing. One day you're going to make it." And after he sowed that seed into my life, of course, I went on and landed a record deal and started releasing my own music. And fast forward, I after releasing those projects, I started working with Al Jarreau and so many other artists, and currently actually working as a bass player with George Benson now because I just love playing and I don't want to give it up. But so the guys, when they decided to start TMF, I received a phone call from Bear. Now, during the pandemic, the Holy Spirit led me to post 2 songs every week on social media just to lift people's spirits. So I was posting jazz, gospel, R&B, just anything that came to my heart. And of course, being a huge fan of Maze, I posted one of their songs, We Are One. And Nell, who is Rome's lady, saw it and showed it to Roame, and it reached like over 1 million people. And Roame saw it and showed it to the rest of the guys. And then I get a call from Bear. And he says, "Hey man, this is Barry. I mean, you probably know me. You remember me from Larry Campbell." And I said, "Man, are you kidding me? Of course I know who you are." So anyway, and he said, "I would like to invite you on a Zoom call with the guys." And I said, "Okay," but he wouldn't tell me why. So, I get on this Zoom call and I'm thinking in my mind he wants me to sub on bass for him with Maze, and I'm like, okay. So we're on the Zoom call, and to my surprise, they asked me to consider being the lead vocalist for the group. And of course, when they said that to me, I started laughing. And I said, fellas, the search is over, because they told me they were vetting other guys. And I said, no, the search is over. And to my surprise, they called me the next day and said, you're our guy. So that's how I became a part of TMF, and I am truly thrilled and honored.
Excellent. Thank you for that, sir. We'll definitely get back to a little bit more on TMF, but let's continue with Jubu. Tell us a little bit about your background musically before the Maze organization and how you connected with the Maze organization.
First of all, I'm the heartbeat of TMF. Okay. Let's establish that.
He's the immediate
I'm the heartbeat. I'm the heartbeat of TMF. No, for me, my earliest recollection, I started on bass around 5 years old. And for me, it was in gospel music, like the rest of the guys, and quartet gospel to be exact. And for me, man, I was just, my dad was my hero. And he was a weekend warrior of sorts. He did a 9 to 5, but he always played, he sang, and I guess he would be a combination of Joe Lagun of the Mighty Clouds of Joy and Tyrone Davis, a blues singer. Just some Johnny Taylor stuff too, but he was my hero, and he was a bad man, as far as I was concerned. So I would tell Roame all the time, my favorite sport is probably boxing. Had my dad been a boxer, I would have followed in that. I was just following my dad. I had no idea what I was doing, but I just wanted to be like him in every sense of the way, every way. He liked old cars. I drive old cars now, So it really was me just trying to be like my father. But I fell in love with music at an early age, but I always wanted to play guitar. But in our band, my dad's gospel group, the Soulful Sons of Zion, he was the guitarist, and we didn't have a bass player. So he made me play bass, but what would happen was he would go to work, and my grandmother would take the lock off on the closet and let me strum around with his guitar, because I would beg her, let me play. So this happened for a few years, until around 9 years old. I was playing, and I broke a string. And so the cat was out of the bag, because she had to tell him, he's going to open his guitar case and see the string is broken. So she tells him, John, don't get mad, because I let him play it. But, he broke his strings. And so my dad calls me in the living room. He's like, you broke my string? Yes, sir. I'm thinking I'm about to get the greatest beatings of all time, And he said, so you've been playing my guitar? Yes, Father. So what he did was he set up both amplifiers. He plugged up the bass and plugged up the guitar after he fixed the string. And he said, all right, let's play something. So we went through a few quartet songs that people would know. And after about maybe 10 minutes, he stopped and he said, man, you're better than me. And from that point on, I became the guitar player, and he switched over to bass. And, and he would always tell me that there was a lot of musicians that were around, but I really fell in love with it. At an early age, I just fell in love with guitar. And the reason, this will make you laugh probably, the reason why I wanted to play it was because it got more attention.
It's true.
My dad would play a small lick, and he would follow that lick by telling the people, I never been to music school, but God is all right, isn't he? And then he'd come back with another lick, and you hear all the church women especially said, hey man, play baby. And I was like, hey, I want that, because my first initial reaction would only be when we come up on stage, oh, look at the kid, the bass is bigger than him. But that would be it, you know? And then he's getting all these comments all during our set. So, oh, no. That's what I want, right? So fast forward to, I was friends. I grew up in Oakland, California, and I was friends and associates with Carl Wheeler, our previous keyboard player that Daniel ended up replacing. Raphael Sadiq. We all grew up together. Our parents knew each other. Raphael Sadiq from Tony. We all grew up together. We didn't go to the same school. They all went to the same school, but my parents wanted me to go to school in a better neighborhoods, so they would find people and borrow their addresses so I could go to those particular schools. But I was friends with Raphael, and I want to say in 1988, his sister was tragically killed in a high-speed chase in Oakland, and a police car struck her. So I went to the wake, and I went up to him and I said, hey, man, it's been a while since I've seen you. Just wanted to give you my condolences. So he says, hey, man, wow, it's good to see you. Been a while, man. Why don't you come by the church? We're going to rehearse I'm doing a song for a funeral the next day. Okay, cool. So I came by the rehearsal, and he said, man, let me hear you play something. So I just doodled around, and he said, oh, wow, you're not the same dude. And let's exchange numbers. I'll be in touch with you. And after her funeral, a couple weeks later, he called me and said, hey, man, why don't you come by the house? And, that happened for about 3 to 4 months. Occasionally I'd come by the house, and when I come by the house, he'd have an acoustic guitar, and he'd play me some of their songs. And full disclaimer, I really didn't like their music. I just, I liked hanging out with him, and they had a song, their first hit single was a song called Hey Little Walter. That was an offtake of Wade in the Water. And me being, from a Christian household where everything, even bowling and playing cards, was taboo, I was just like, I don't want to deal with you guys. Y'all going to hell, So, but he would always ask me, man, what would you play on this song? What would you do on this song? He said, wow, man, I'm going to try to get you in the band, but I have to slide you in because, his older brother was the guitarist, and I was like, yeah, whatever, man, because I really didn't care about playing with them anyway. Well, fast forward, 1989, they're in the studio working on their second album. So he asked me to come in and play on a couple of things. And in December of 89, they started rehearsing for a tour that they were going to do to launch the album, to support the album. And their manager at the time called me and he said, hey, man, we're thinking about bringing you into the band. How's 800 a week? 1989, I'm 19 years old, and I'm going too fast. I like, my story isn't as amazing as Chris's story, but I went to Berkeley High School. Once again, my parents put me in another school zone. Berkeley High School had a very prestigious high school jazz band. But I didn't read music or anything, but I went to audition anyway. They had another guitar player at the time that was there, and these guys were reading and everything. But the teacher, the band conductor, he said he just wanted to hear me play. So I started playing, and he didn't pick me. He picked the other guy, but he pulled me to the side and he said, you have great ears. I want you to stick with me, come around, and I'm going to give you music. Just go and learn that music. He didn't want to even, disturb me or try to teach me how to read. He said, I'm afraid to do that. He said, but you have great ears, so I'll give you music and learn that music and come, bring it back to me. And what he did for me was open my eyes. All I knew was quartet at the time. And he started opening my eyes to big band jazz and blues. And I was just, wow, I didn't even know this stuff existed, you know? And so fast forward to going to Tony when the guy asked me, you know, we're going to start you out at no, actually he said 600. And I said, wow. But something inside of me was like, don't just go for that. And I was like, that sounds cool, man. But, you know, I was looking for 1,000 if I'm going to do this, you know. He said, 1,000? Man, how are you going to negotiate? You doing $50 gigs at Yoshi's on Monday nights? I know about you, son. And I said, yeah, but I have a scholarship to Berklee College of Music. And, you know, I'm gonna go to school, man. And you know, get my game up and do my own music and everything. I said, so, you know, I'd like $1,000 if I'm going to sacrifice that. Knowing that I didn't want to ever go to school anyway. After I got out of high school, I literally hated school. You know, I hated it from the time I got out my mom's car until my dad picked me up. And, but something just told me to negotiate. So we settled on $800 a week. And I said, okay, you know, that's a decent start, man, you know. But on the inside, I'm literally jumping for joy on the inside, like, oh my God, right? Well, there was a counselor that would check on me from Berklee School of Music, because I took the year off when I graduated. I graduated 88. I begged my mom, because she, you know, I would have been the first one to graduate of our family. And that was very, very important to her. And I said, Mom, just give me a year off, please. I hate school. Just give me a year and I'll go. Well, during that year is when I got that call. So the counselor called me, and I was going to start in 1990, second semester. So he called me and I said, hey, I'm coming. I just got an opportunity, though, and I want to know what you think. There's a group called Tony, and they just offered me $800 a week. They're going to do a 6-month tour, and I want to do that tour. And the guy says, man, I got to be honest with you. You're going to come here for 5 years, and you'll be teaching kids after you leave here. You won't make $800 a week. So go on that tour. We'll be waiting for you. And I've never gotten off the road, because I toured with them from 89 to 98. And then 98, I got a call from Ricky Minor, who was the musical director for Whitney Houston. And he calls me and he goes, hey, man, are you Jubu Smith? I said, yes, sir. He said, are you the guy that played on those Tony records? And I said, yes, sir. I want you to come down and audition in Los Angeles for a small artist named Whitney Houston. I said, a small artist named Whitney Houston. And at that time, she had sold close to 100 million records, you know? And he said, so how are your eyes? I said, well, I think I got 20/20 vision, you know? He said, no, man, do you read music? And I said, no, I can't lie to you. I don't read music, but I can remember very well, you know? And he said, well, go get all her albums. And you're in Oakland. I said, yes, sir. So go get all her albums. You drive up, learn all that music, and we want you to audition. So I literally tried to remember about 50 songs, man. And when I came to audition, there had to be 20 guitar players, about 40 bass players. That's all they were checking for that day. They were auditioning for. And a who's who of musicians were there. But I heard all those guys play, and I said, hey, you know, if I get a fair shake, I'm gonna get this gig. I just felt I understood it more. I felt, you know, I just felt I was just as good, you know. And when it came time for me to play, we did a couple songs, and he asked me to solo. I took a solo. It's not in the Guinness book like Daniel's is, but I took a solo, and when I got done, he said, "Hey man, stick around for a minute," you know. And I was like, "Okay." And then the other guitar player came up to me and he said, "Yeah, he probably just wants your number for the future references, man. You did a great job." So I was like, "Yeah, okay," you know. And then around 8 o'clock, this audition started at 11. So around 8 o'clock, they said, "Hey guys, thank you everybody, and we want Jubu to stay." And I was like, "Wow, okay." So from there, I had toured with Whitney for 2 years before I got a call from Mr. Beverly himself. Now, prior to that, when I was still with Tony, I met Roame. I was doing a side gig for a very talented artist named Jay Spencer out of California, rest in peace, saxophone player, one of the first people that was signed to Michael Jordan's label at the time. Can't remember the name of the label, but Mojazz, I think that's what it was. And so I was playing at the Greek Theater, and we got done playing. So I'm walking up the top of the theater, and I just see this guy dressed almost like Eddie Murphy in Holy Man. He just has on this white 2-piece linen outfit and some sandals, right? So about a quarter mile down, man, this man is walking towards me with his arms wide open. I'm like, did this dude come to save me, or what's going on here? And he says, "Hey man, come on, man, bring it in. Hug me, man. Come on, man. Give me some love, man." And I was like, I'm a kid from Oakland. I'm a ghetto kid, I just have a gift. And I was like, who's this dude wanting to hug me, man? So Roame embraced me, and I knew who he was once he got it closer to view. I said, oh my God, this is the cat from Maze. I love Maze. Big, big, big fan of Maze. And this was even before Carl got in the band. So I'll say this was maybe 96. So I get a call from Frankie in 99. He calls me himself, and I end up hanging up on him because I thought it was a prank. He calls me and he goes, "Hey, what's going on, man? It's Frankie B. I'm trying to see if you got eyes for the band." I said, "Man, stop playing games with me." So I hang up the phone. And he calls back and he goes, "No, please don't hang up, brother. I got your number from Carl Wheeler." When he mentioned Carl Wheeler, then I was totally embarrassed. I said, "Wow, man, I just hung up on this guy." And I said, "Hey, man, I apologize. I'm not used to the artist calling. I'm used to an assistant or management. I apologize." And he said, "No, man, no problem. I handle my band, man. It's important to me." And he said, "I just want to know if you wanted to fly up and let's talk about it." And, and he took my information himself. And the whole time I'm on the phone, and he's booking my flight while I'm on the phone. And I'm just like, man, this is unbelievable. So the next day I fly up, and he has someone pick me up and bring me to his house. And we sit and talk for a few minutes, and he asked me, did I have anything I could play? And we were still at cassette tapes. So I pull out a cassette tape of an artist that I worked with named Rasan Patterson. And Frank heard about 30 minutes of it, and it was him and Robin Dewey, the bass player that Larry took over from. And he took the tape out after about maybe a minute and said, "Hey man, if you in, we want you." And I said, "Yeah, I'm playing with Whitney, but I'll figure it out." So he said, "Well, just talk to my manager and tell him what you need, and we'll make it happen." So I'll be honest with you guys. It went back to my Tony days of negotiation. I said, "Well, Frankie's more of a cult figure. Whitney is a bigger pop star, and I have more opportunities from a standpoint of endorsements and other situations, but I really, really loved Maze's music." And I just kept remembering Roame, and I said, "Wow, man, if I get with this band, I know I'm gonna love this guy. I'm gonna love hanging out with this guy." So when his manager called me, I had spoken with my wife, and I said, babe, Whitney's been so good to me. And she said, well, just throw a crazy number out there. If they accept it, then you should do it. And I did. I threw a crazy number out there, what I thought was crazy at the time. And his manager said, well, he told me I can't come back with nothing but a yes. So, okay. And I told my wife, our son was, I think he had just started walking that morning. And I ran and told her, I said, well, baby, teach him how to run. Because we in there, and excuse me, guys, I'm getting over a cold. But that was my introduction to Maze. And honestly, I have to say the determining factor for me was I really felt I've always wanted to be in a great band. Tony was a great band. And I thought that would have lasted for us, but things happened. And when I got the call from those guys and I thought about Roame, and I said, well, man, this will get me back to a band of brotherhood and everything. And I knew that they toured all the time. I heard stories literally where they would be on a bus 7 months at a time. And that's what I really, really wanted. So that's how I got into Maze.
Wow, Jubu, that's quite a story. Thank you so much for that. And
I told you I was the heartbeat.
I think I want you doing my negotiating from now on.
There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.